Hey folks, 13-3 here into our second season with our guest, former Boston Bruin and Pittsburgh Penguin player Gregg Sheppard. This episode is sponsored by Market & Johnson, Parker Insurance, Valley Sports Academy, Northwoods Therapy and Associates, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, which has been committed to the healthcare needs of patients in western Wisconsin since 1954. Mogi.
Well, first of all, thanks to our next door neighbors in Chippewa Falls, Trina and Ken Kuchko. They have a nice place out here in Arizona, and they happened to run into Gregg Sheppard a couple years ago, been friends of his, golf buddies, and Gregg was thoughtful enough to say yes, at least at the time. We'll see what he thinks about after the interview, but thoughtful enough to grace us with his presence today. So,
well, thanks, guys. Lots of times I get asked where I'm from, and I always claim to be from Split Lip, Saskatchewan. So I think I'm with kinfolk right here.
Split Lips?
I like that.
Split Lips, good.
You came in with a great attitude right out of the gate, shooting jokes at us and giving us a hard time. Isn't that just the way the hockey community is supposed to be?
Well, we were a fun-loving team in Boston, and I was probably one of the ringleaders there, so I was always doing something to offset the pressure of the hockey games. And I always thought that it helped alleviate some of that pressure and tension in the dressing room.
Oh, and we want to hear a little bit about that tension-releasing stuff.
Tension-releasing, I like that.
Yes.
Good term.
Let's go back to your roots. Where and when did you start playing hockey yourself?
Well, actually, I started, was influenced by my cousin who was skating before me, and I never started skating till I was 8 years old. And he approached me one day and he said, "How come you never come to the hockey arena?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any skates." And so I finally got a pair of skates, and I purchased them for nothing from the BCYC, which was the Battleford Community Youth Club. And they were a fellowship in the town where I lived, and they sponsored kids that couldn't afford hockey equipment or baseball equipment. So my first pair of skates I got given to me, and I started skating. But I never started skating until I was 7 or 8 years old. Which, by standards in the Canadian world, is late in life. Yeah, it is. Like today's kids, they get on when they're practically walking, they're on skates already. And I started later. And
didn't hold you back at all, evidently.
Well, from then on, I practically lived at the rink. I was what the terminology was a rink rat at that time. So the rink was actually only 1 block away from where I lived. Well, that's
that helps.
Enough. Yeah, that helps out a lot. Yeah. Growing up, did you play in any pee-wee level, squirt level youth leagues, or what was the dynamic of hockey back in your day?
Well, we had the different leagues, and you started with mites and then termites and then bantam and midget, and then I went on to play in North Battleford with the Beaver Bruins, and it was called the juvenile team. And it was a feeder system for actually, at that time, we were all sponsored by the original 6, which was Boston. So when I was 15 years old, I signed what they called a C card at that time. So I was owned by the Bruins when I was 15. So I grew up in their organization with the Beaver Bruins in North Battleford. And then I went on and graduated to the Estevan Bruins, which is kind of the Western Hockey League right now.
So each NHL team had certain areas that they were able to draw their players from?
Well, I went before the draft.
Right.
So what they did is in wherever you live, they would try to sign you to a C card. And I know players that, like from North Battleford area, they probably went and played with the Red Wing organization or Chicago Blackhawk. But being from Battlefords, where we had the Beaver Bruins, it was naturally for me to go across the river to play.
All right.
Was Boston your team of choice growing up as a kid? Did you follow them, or did you have another team that you liked?
Well, in Canada, you either were a Montreal Canadien or you were a Toronto Maple Leaf. And then there was a sprinkling of Detroit Red Wings, Chicago Blackhawks. But my favorite team growing up was the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And how did you feel then when you signed the C card with the Bruins?
Well, at that time, you really don't realize what you're doing. But
15 years old for crying out loud. That's
they make
pretty
you
young.
Sign a C card before you play on the team. So I wanted to play on the team, so naturally you signed a C card.
Could you have signed with anybody, or did they reach out to you at that time?
Well, I could have, like other teams or at that time organizations could approach you and ask if you wanted to sign. But it was kind of I don't know if it was an unwritten rule, but in the areas where you were if there was that sponsored team from the current NHL team, you generally played in that town.
So what do you think they saw in you that they wanted you to sign that C card with them?
Well, actually, they sent a scout out, and I think he was blind because he picked me to play. So,
The old blind scout trick.
so you can say I blindsided the Bruins.
I'm guessing the coach was just hollering at you enough he kept hearing his name. So
He wasn't a deaf scout, evidently.
Right, yeah. Well, you kind of graduate, I guess, and you just become better and better with better coaching. We had really good coaching in the Beaver Bruins in North Battleford, and then going on to Estevan, we had very good coaching there for 3 years. And from there, I went on to Oklahoma City for 3 years. So, in each step, you have really good coaching. So,
Sure. So I was going to ask you. I was looking at your hockey DB, and I noticed you played all your should I say minor hockey, junior hockey in Canada, and then you come to the States. What was a different hockey culture like in those two different places?
well, I was fortunate enough when I was with the Bruins at their training camp, they sent me to Salt Lake City my first year. And I was out there only for 5 or 6 games, and they traded me for a guy named Danny Shock, who I played junior with. So he went from Oklahoma City to Salt Lake City, and I went from Salt Lake City to Oklahoma City. And they were both Bruins farm teams at that time.
Okay.
But they just moved players at that. And so when I got to Oklahoma City, I was very surprised at all the hockey knowledge that they had there. And the team had been in existence for several years and was a successful team. So the transition wasn't cultural-wise was just like Split Lip, Saskatchewan. And when I was in Oklahoma City, there are Okies down there, and they're really good quality people. I really enjoyed it in Oklahoma City.
Nice.
you mentioned that the coaching really helped develop your game. Any coaches that stand out right now that you'd want to mention that really helped propel your game in your youth?
Well, in junior hockey, there was two brothers, Mo and Jeep George, that ran our Beaver Bruin team, and they were very, very, very good. And then when I graduated to the Western Hockey League, which would have been in Estevan, we had Scotty Monroe and Ernie McLean, who were very good, and they were top-notch coaches and probably the leader coaches in that Western Hockey League.
And for our listeners, what position did you play, and was that by choice?
I played center when they dropped the puck only, and then from there on, everybody was free game.
Did you win more of the draws than you lost?
Probably stats-wise, I probably won more because I ended up developing into a better centerman. I played left wing quite a bit too when I played junior. But then after that, I watched the technique other really good centermen had when they went to the face-off, so I adopted some of their techniques.
Nice.
Good for you. But I don't think we ever really got the question answered about what skill set you brought that you were noticed by the Boston Bruins.
He kind of glossed over that with the blind scout story.
Maybe it was just that he was a jokester and they needed somebody in the locker room.
Well, the attitude I always had when I went to the rink, every game I had, I looked across at my opposition guy, and I'd always say to myself, tonight, I outworked that guy. And I think it was my work ethic more than anything. And then with work ethic, you develop skills. And if I didn't have the work ethic, I don't think I'd have played it.
So you knew you had the work ethic. Did you feel like you're outworking that guy? You're gonna dominate him, and that really helped your confidence?
Yes, it develops that way, and then you get better and better, and then all of a sudden you start believing in yourself that you can do more things.
So I was talking to Ken, and he mentioned something about when you guys were out golfing one time, and I don't know, there was a particularly tough hole to play in, and you said, just pretend like you're going down on a breakaway against Ed Jacquemin. You're going to score every time. Well,
that's a positive attitude that you bring, but there was lots of failures. And golfing is a different character of a game itself too.
Absolutely, yeah. Nobody's
all alone.
Nobody's going after you out there on the course. It's all about you.
Yeah.
You come into the Bruins organization 72-73 season, if that's correct, and it's the year after they win the cup. What is that atmosphere in that locker room as a rookie coming into play with the Boston Bruins?
Well, the expectations is there every game to give it your best. That was number one, is to try to work as hard and work as a team concept. They were a pretty jovial team. In actual fact, I played the year before in the playoffs, in the 72 playoffs. So me and another fellow were called up from Oklahoma City. So I started the year in the spring in the playoffs with the Stanley Cup team.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Can you give us a little insight? Did you get a chance to strap on the skates and get out there and take a few shifts?
Yeah, we did. I played. I was on the. I dressed for 3 or 4 games, and I was on the ice for 2 of the games against St. Louis, and then against the Rangers, the 1 game for the Stanley Cup.
So what's the status of? Are you on the Stanley Cup? Were you able to, or was that a time when you had to have more games under your belt to get your name on the cup?
Yeah, exactly. It was a time where you had to play 35 games. It changed a year or 2 later. As I recall, the Canadiens had always had 4 people or 4 other guys in the stands, and they won the cup that year, and they couldn't get their name on the cup, even though they were with the team all year long.
Oh, man.
So they changed the ruling, and now they allow a certain number of players to be on there, and the number might be 25 players or something.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's still spectacular.
Hey, you were there. You got to raise the cup
ice with Esposito or
we're gonna get to all those boys here coming up
in a moment. Absolutely. But let's go back then. So let's talk about that. You're called up to play with the Bruins in the playoffs. Now describe that locker room atmosphere. Who's the guy that's in charge of the locker room when you walk in that you know that's not the guy that you're going to smart off to?
Well, there wasn't any particular one guy, but there were some leaders on that team like Esposito, Orr, Bucyk, Cashman, Hodge. Like there were some veteran players on there that had been, very successful. So when you walk in there, you're in awe of them. I was at least, and you want to toe the line and play your best. I was with the Black Aces at that time. They called the guys that were half a dozen of us guys that were. Stayed on the ice after practice lots.
Oh. So let's talk about those guys again. As I'm doing your research, there's 12 sweaters already retired in the Bruins organization, and you played with 5 of these guys, with Orr, Esposito, Bucyk, Terry O'Reilly, and Rick Middleton. So what set these guys apart to reach the levels that they did in their careers?
Well, I think it's the ambition. Certainly, you have to have the skill. And they're really good players. They come to play every night, and that's a difference. You can be good, and if you're lackluster, then your success is not there. It's like in golfing. Like you see the good golfers on TV, but you don't see behind the scenes the work ethic they have and how much time they put into the game.
Yeah.
Well, somebody like yourself, your hockey DB has you listed at 5'8", 160 pounds, and you survived 10 years in the NHL. What was the drive or, the ambition that kept you in the game?
Well, I guess more than anything, it was a fear of failure. And I was determined not to fail. And if you're not going to fail, then you got to work hard. And that's what made me successful at my stature. In fact, I was 5'8", but 180. So I'm stocky enough to take some of the bruises. And
oh yeah, you were built. What was a workout regimen like in the NHL at that time?
Well, I go back to my first year in training camp, and the work ethic. I thought I was coming to the Bruins organization, and they had won the cup in '70. And I was there that year for training camp, and I thought, boy, this is going to be tough to, in training camp, twice a day on the ice. So the first morning of training camp, Tommy Johnson was the coach at that time, and he said to the boys when we were getting dressed, Teddy Green is going to do a workout out in the hallway. He said, everybody in their underwear, get out in the hallway. So we all go out in the hallway, and Teddy says, okay, everybody lay down. So we're all laying down on the mats out there. And Teddy said, okay, everybody get up. Everybody got up. He said, okay, everybody back in the dressing room. I said, oh, I like this team already.
Boy, that's a tough workout, JC. I don't know, man.
Well, things had to turn around a little bit after that.
Yeah, well, then once the puck dropped, the whistle blows, everybody was prepared to play. I mean, it was again, at that level, you've got to have a relief somewhere, and the relief was off the ice.
So you knew on the rink it was game on. Yeah. Off the rink, it's okay. Yeah. We're going to have a good time. But we understand that things have really changed between the past era of hockey and the current era of hockey. You look at the equipment, but you also look at the time and effort these guys put in on their training. I mean, used to be where guys after the game, they'd go out, have a few beers, and you hear about nowadays, they don't really seem to do that. That's gotta hurt that camaraderie a little bit, I would think.
Yeah, like a couple of stories. Like Johnny Bucyk was mainstay in Boston. He's still there. And I asked him one time about what the difference is. And he said, you cannot believe the difference. He said, these kids, will get on the airplane and they got earphones in and they got their cell phone going. They're talking to their agent or they're talking to their investment advisor, It's really different. I know when I played, I used to have a farm or a ranch back home. And I can remember flying in on the weekend of the training camp, and I wouldn't have skates on all summer. And I'd go to training camp on Sunday and put my skates on. But initially, when I first went to the Bruins, we used to skate for 2 weeks before we played our first exhibition game. And now, when you go in and check in on your medicals on the Sunday, you're playing your first exhibition game on Wednesday. So you have to come to training camp in condition.
So you guys really used training camp to get in shape back in the day.
Yeah. It was a case of not coming to training camp totally out of condition. It was a case of coming to, and then honing your conditioning once you got there.
So if you had a farm, were you hulking up, throwing bales of hay around and all that kind of stuff? That's probably a workout right there.
Yeah, we did. That was manual labor. We bought an old farm and we had lots of work to do, building corrals. So it was lots of manual work, but
sure,
a lot of tractor work too. So
It wasn't like you were sitting in front of a TV all summer long doing nothing.
No, I was working. Yeah, I did take one summer off, the summer of '73, but after that, I worked every summer.
Okay.
So was it on your farm, or did you have another job that you went to, a business or anything like that?
No, I worked on the farm.
Back to the farm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Looking back and comparing contracts of your era to the contracts nowadays, obviously, we do have inflation and everything's gone up, but players are making multi-millions of dollars now. Back in your area, if you want to share, what was a contract like for you back in the day?
Well, when I first signed in Oklahoma City, I signed for a $5,000 bonus, signing bonus, and $6,500 to play in Oklahoma City my first year. So I made $13,000 for 6 months' work. I thought that was awesome.
Oh yeah,
For me. And playing a sport that I like. This is easy work.
Yeah, if you can get paid to play a game and have fun.
And my first contract in Boston, I made $35,000 a year.
Holy cow!
And that was probably damn good money back then.
Well, I thought it was great money, but things have changed since then, no doubt. But and then I think the highest paid player that when I finished, I think it might have been either Marcel Dion or Gilles Perreault. I think they were making $400,000 a year, $450 or something like that.
And at what pace were you at compared to them when you finally retired, as far as money?
Quite a bit less.
Okay.
And we're not going there, evidently.
We're going to leave that one alone.
Okay.
All right. On that note, we're going to give a shout out to two of our sponsors, Parker Insurance, multiple companies, multiple products, multiple savings. See Ryan Parker, who is a hockey coach himself in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, for all of your insurance needs. And thanks to our friends at Market & Johnson, longtime supporters of the great game of hockey and our youth throughout the Chippewa Valley region. Mogi.
So, Greg, you played in 700 plus regular season and playoff games, and you scored 580 points, really close to a point a game guy. Where did that offensive skill come from?
Just when you're younger, you develop the scoring touch, and a lot of it comes naturally, anticipation and being in the right spot at the right time. It comes with your fellow right winger, left winger, your defenseman. So I always prided myself in trying to be an all-around player. I played the power play, and also I killed penalties. So I always really enjoyed that.
Let's talk about that. Who were your line mates with Boston that helped propel you to where you ended up getting?
Well, when I first went there, I was on the third line, and Dougie Roberts and another guy, I can't remember his name. But then the second year I went in with Bucyk and Dougie Roberts, and then I had Rick Middleton for a while. And then when I really got established in there, it was Donnie Marcotte and Terry O'Reilly. We played together for about 4 years.
Oh, you had one heck of a line.
Yeah.
Hence, one of your seasons, you were a plus 45, which is an astonishing feat. So obviously, when you're talking power play and penalty kill and out there for any other reason, Coach wanted you on the ice because chances are you were going to come out in the plus column.
Yeah, well, my ambition that year was to try to match my IQ. So I think I surpassed that a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good for you.
Okay.
This is awesome. All right.
So you're playing. Expansion had taken place in the late '60s, so it goes from 6 teams now to 12 teams. Can you tell us a little bit about the travel from your era of playing?
Yeah, well, and just elaborating on that expansion team, and the expansion also, I was just at the right time at the right place. At my 3rd year in Oklahoma City, I was prepared to go back home and forget about hockey because I could see the Bruins were stacked. But also that 2nd year or that 3rd year, the World Hockey League started. So that opened up a lot of opportunities, and I was with the Bruins the previous year in the playoffs in '72 when they won the cup. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get traded or somebody will pick me up in the expansion or I'll go to another team. And I didn't. I thought, well, and then I went to training camp and I just told them, I said, if I'm not playing, I'm going back home. And they just, at that time, had started the Boston Braves. And they said, well, we'd really like you to start with the Boston Braves in Boston. That was the American League farm team, minor league hockey team. And they said the first time that they have an injury or anything like, they'll bring you up. So, in fact, the actual first game that I played with the Bruins on the regular season was in Toronto. So it was awesome for me to be in Toronto for my first game. And then we played back home. We played against the Islanders in the expansion team. And my first game in Boston, I played regular season. I scored 3 goals. And after that, they couldn't get me out of the lineup. So,
yeah. Good for
that's
you.
A pretty
that's awesome.
damn good way of
That's one way to stay in the lineup. Yeah.
Let's go back to these plane rides and bus rides and stuff. Obviously, you've let it out that you were kind of the guy that went to
stir the pot a little bit.
Stir the pot levity in the locker room. What kind of shenanigans would happen on these road trips?
Well, you got to pass the time somehow. When you get 20 guys together, there's always something going to happen. I think thinking back about it, I'd smuggle a can of shaving cream on and put it on top of somebody's head, and they couldn't feel that, so they'd be walking around with shaving cream on their head. Or if you fell asleep, you cut the guy's tie in half. Things like that. Yeah.
Harmless fun.
Yeah, just fun. Right. Yeah. Or you take the colored candy and pass them out, and all of a sudden somebody have blue lips all over it. Yeah, it was. I remember one time with Tommy Johnson, and a good guy. He injured his Achilles tendon, so he had to stop playing. He was an NHL player with Montreal Canadiens too, but Tommy walked with a limp. And this happened about the 18th day of a 29-day road trip we were on, and we were going through the Chicago airport, and we had to walk from one end of O'Hare to the other. And Tommy, at those days, all of the NHL guys had a white top coat with a belt on. So we were late getting to our airplane. We're all following Tommy, and there was 20 of us guys limping through the airport.
Follow the leader, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then you got to wonder if there's a writer there going, every Bruin is injured.
They're all injured. It's gonna be a tough road trip, boys.
Yeah, right.
So no helmets back in your era, Greg, for the most part.
I'm paying for it now.
Seriously, yeah, part of the IQ thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, going in minor hockey, I had a helmet for a while, and I took it off, and I didn't wear it. In fact, the first year that they were introducing the helmets, I didn't wear a helmet, and then they made it mandatory. Mandatory only in regards if you got injured, there wasn't any benefit to health insurance
if you didn't have a helmet on,
and you had to sign a waiver.
Oh boy!
And I think McTavish might have been the last guy not to wear probably a helmet. I think he was.
Yep.
But he would have signed a waiver that in the event of injury, he had no claim for health.
Was it a different game then? You just didn't see the sticks up the way you kind of do now because everybody's protected. They have a visor as well now.
Yeah. There was a little more respect for your opposition. I remember my first year I was playing in Montreal, and I had no business being on the corner on the wall, and they passed the puck to me, and I turned around, and Guy Lapointe was coming in to hit me with my head down, and I immediately raised my stick up, and I cut him on the face. Well, he went back, he looked at me, and I went back to the bench, and the players on the Bruins bench said, rookie, keep your stick down, because you don't want that to happen to you.
Right.
So,
you policed your own team.
Yeah, they come to me right away and said, that you may do that in the minor leagues, but you don't do that up here. Yeah, if somebody's going to hit you, you take the hit.
Speaking of Guy Lapointe, looking back at your career, you played against Hall of Famers and individuals that should be in the Hall of Fame. When you were on the ice, who was the toughest competitor you faced?
Probably Brian Trottier.
Okay.
Gilles Perreault. I mean, it's hard to... Marcel Dion. When I was with Marcotte and O'Reilly, our line was the checking line. So I had to play against all the top offensive lines all the time, especially at home because you got last change on the ice. But on the road, we'd do quick changes. So I always had to play against the top lines. Our line did.
And you named some pretty tough characters, that's for
absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
And who was your nemesis as far as a team? When the Bruins went to a location or that team came to play you, which team did you get the most hyped up about because it was going to be the toughest, grittiest game?
Well, probably the Canadians. And they, if you look back, I think they not dominated us, but they won more games than we won against them. They were probably our toughest opposition. And they played the game the way it should. They played it tough. They didn't play it dirty. Where Philadelphia was known as the Broad Street Bullies at that time, so we knew that was always going to be a physical, chippier game type of thing. And in fact, one game there, Lloyd Gilmore, who was an excellent referee. I thought you would catch up. Yeah. But anyways, during the course of the game, there was lots of hacking and gouging going on. And Brad Park at that time was traded from the Rangers to our team. And he yelled at Lloyd. He said, "Lloyd, for Christ's sake, call somebody else out here before somebody gets hurt." He said, "Okay, Park, 2 minutes for unsportsmanlike conduct."
Oh, no. Ouch.
Yeah.
He did ask for it, didn't he, JC?
He did.
Yeah.
What was preparation like? You went the gamut there. You went to Canadians, who were a finesse team. You went to Philadelphia, who were the gritty team. How did the coach prepare you guys for those two differences?
The physical part of the game was never ever talked about. It was talk about matching lines and positional play, special teams. That was the biggest part of the game. And then the motivation, saying like, you got to be on your toes tonight. You got to play your best. You're playing the best. To be the best, you got to beat the best.
Speaking of the best, you were with the Bruins, and they were always extremely competitive. And then you get traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. How did you feel about that move?
It was a shocker for me. I was in my option year, and there was a half a dozen of us guys in Boston that were in their option years. Everybody else had signed, and I got back to training camp, and I'm the only guy that's not signed. And so I was talking to my lawyer, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, we're still negotiating." And the next thing I know, it was just days away from training camp starting. And I come in the house after skating with the Bruins, my fellow guys, and then we golfed. And I come in the house, and my wife said to me, "I think we've been traded to Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Press are calling." I said, "Oh, really?" So I turned the TV on, and that's how I found out I was traded. It was on the TV.
Oh, man.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. And further to that, I never did hear from Harry Sinden, who was the general manager who made the trade. Oh. And that weekend, Brad Park. It was a Brad Park golf tournament where all us players went to it. And it was a charity event. And he asked me if I was coming. I said, "No, I'm not coming. I'm not a Bruin anymore." He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, You're coming. You're a Bruin yet." So during the course of the game of golfing, I see Harry Sinden and Tommy Johnson and the two of the scouts coming up one side of the fairway. And I walked over to their green. And I stood beside the green while they were playing. And Harry come over to me and said, "Gee, Greg, I'm sorry." He said, "I couldn't call you because the press from Pittsburgh, they wanted to talk to you about the trade." And he said, "It was just too late calling me." And I said, "Well, Harry, I haven't gone any place in 4 days. I haven't changed my telephone number. I haven't heard from you in 4 days.
Yeah.
Put him on the spot, as you should.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it'd be a courtesy thing. Like I go back to the time when, I was 15 years old and signed a Bruins C card. So I was owned by the Bruins. And I thought, at least they could call me and say, this is what happened.
You would think that would be the least thing they could have done.
Exactly.
That's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
I
right.
think.
Yeah. So it hurt lots going to, for me to go to Pittsburgh, and I didn't go to Pittsburgh. I missed all the training camp. Until Baz Bastine, who was the general manager at that time, kept calling me and saying, "You coming to training?" I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I'm not coming to training camp until I sign a new contract. Why would I go to Pittsburgh without a new contract?" I said, "I'm in my option year. I played 6 years. You know how I play. Send me a contract."
Yeah.
So we started negotiating and kept on. I said, "I'm not playing for that money." So I just held out.
And eventually they
came to their senses.
Yeah, came to their senses, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and we had a really good team in Pittsburgh. We had 4 or 5 guys that would come from Philly over there, and I phoned right away. I phoned Ross Lonsberry, and I told him what was going on. And I said, "You tell the guys that I'll be there, but I want to get my contract." And I said, "It's nothing to do with going to Pittsburgh. I'm going to be going to Pittsburgh to play."
What was it like playing against the Bruins?
It was
After you'd
really
been there,
different. The
you
first
knew
game,
all the guys.
Yeah, it was really different. There was a few of the guys, O'Reilly and Marcotte, come to me in warm-ups and said, "Shep, sorry to see you go. This is our game player. Let's play the game the way you're supposed to play the game."
Yeah.
Who did the Bruins get in exchange for you?
Not much. Everything was equal.
Okay. Well, let's go with that. They didn't get much, but did you at least score when you played against the Bruins, when you were with the Penguins?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He scored against everybody, man. He was amazing.
I love it.
Nothing that was memorable, but I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
So you played for legendary coach Don Cherry, the Rock'em Sock'em hockey. Don Cherry, he didn't like Europeans, didn't like anybody shying away from the physical stuff. What type of a guy was he to play for?
He was a motivator, and he admitted it, and he still admitted today that he says he's not technical on the game itself, but he was a motivator to play for. Yeah, he was very good to play for. Like he was a player's coach, is what he was. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of stories, and of course, he's just the most flamboyant individual when it comes to suits.
That's what I was going to say.
Was he like that on the bench or in person when he's trying to coach you?
Well, he developed a personality for media, but in the dressing room, he was one of the guys like that. But there's a few stories about Grapes. I know that two or 3 years in a row, we always seemed to play LA in the playoffs. And we won at home, the 2 games at home. Then we were going to L.A. And in the spring in L.A., in April, it's pretty warm. So at ice level, the temperature was 78 degrees. And the 3rd game in L.A., we lost. And it was like a 2-1 game or something like that. And so the press were interviewing us players after the game. And a lot of the guys, including me, were talking about, well, it's really hot out there. Like it's hot at ice level. And the next game, Grape said before the game started or before warm-ups, he said, "Well, if it's too hot out there for you guys to play tonight, you can just take your equipment off. You don't have to play. It's too hot." So after the first period, I think the score was like 1-0 for us. And we all come in the dressing room and Grapes come right in behind us. And I was peeled off my jersey and I said, "Holy, is it ever hot out there?" And Grapes turned to me and he said to me, and I said, "Don, it's just the way I like it."
Perfect comeback. Yeah. Who was, looking back at the 2 teams that you played with, who was your favorite teammate, or who was the teammate that stood out with that you kind of gravitated to that you really liked?
Well, I lived in the same town as Johnny Bucyk, so him and I, we did lots together. We rode in together on the games and practices, and we did lots of promotion. He was big on the Heart Association, so we did an annual Heart Fund dinner in Boston, gratis. So I was probably closer to him than any other players. And then across the town, the other side of the town, or the other side of Interstate 1 was Topsfield, and Dallas Smith and Bobby Schmatz lived over there. So there was 4 of us that lived the farthest north. Yeah.
So you kind of just gravitated to each other in the off time, I would assume, then, and did a lot of things together.
Yeah, we did. We did that. But then when we went on the road, we were all together. Like we used to go to lunch together, and so it wasn't a case of any clickiness or anything like that. It's just geographically, the other guys lived in 20 minutes away in another town.
So, speaking of towns, you're from North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Doing my research, and I saw that over 12 NHL players came from that town, and it was a small town of about 14,000, at least right now, and I'm not sure what it was back when you were born. So you've got 12 plus NHL players, you got an NHL coach, and then you also have Joni Mitchell, the folk rock gal. What was in the water up there that produced so much greatness in that small town?
Maybe firewater. I don't know.
Firewater?
Yeah. Well, there's an old saying about Saskatchewan or Canadian boys that there some of these towns there's only hooers and hockey players.
Oh boy!
Oh yeah.
And I asked the guy, and I said, my mom's from there, and he said, oh yeah, what position does she play?
That was a smart guy.
So like some of these smaller towns, you just get more ice time in a smaller arena. So.
Sure.
At that time.
Wow. Amazing.
And, coaching, and the atmosphere is there. Joni Mitchell, I don't think, she might have been born there, spent a few years there. But we still claim her, though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Did she ever lace them up with you guys out there, or no?
No, I never.
Never
Had the opportunity to meet her. No.
Okay.
No.
Hey, we had to shout out our sponsors here. Northwoods Therapy takes pride in being your choice for physical therapy in the Chippewa Valley since 1981. Northwoods Physical Therapy is a clinic where you can receive the care you deserve and are treated like family. And also, Valley Sports Academy, brand new 116,000 square foot state-of-the-art sports training facility located in the Chippewa Valley, featuring hockey, soccer, baseball, softball, and new to the area, lacrosse. They are devoted to helping athletes reach their next level, utilizing skills like the skating treadmill, rapid shot, rapid hands, synthetic ice shooting lanes, 100% real ice training rink, and high-level coaching staff. Check them out today at valleysportsacademy.com.
Mogi and I are still playing hockey in an old men's league. And my wife often comments that, who are you going to see tonight? And of course, I just lay out a litany of nicknames. She has no idea who anybody's real name is. And every hockey team is that way. And obviously, I'm guessing that you went by Shep, in the Bruins locker room. What were some of the other nicknames that some of the guys went by?
Oh, Terry O'Reilly is Taz. Bucyk was Chief. Esposito was Espy. Orr was Four.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's a few of them, yeah.
All right. Yeah. And is that how you guys addressed each other then? Never by the real name? You always just went by the nicknames?
Nicknames more than anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever a tag was attached to, yeah.
Hockey community is the same no matter where you go.
It's the same.
Yeah.
I've heard Evgeny Malkin, the Pittsburgh Penguin, though, doesn't usually know guys' names. He's just, hey... calls them by their number,
right.
Doesn't have a lot of remembering of their names for some reason. I'm not sure what's all about that.
When you guys were on the road, did you guys have to share rooms back then, or were you entitled to your own room?
No, we shared rooms. We had roommates, yeah.
Who was your roommate?
For the longest time, like Bobby Schmatz, Freddie O'Donnell, I had for a long time. And then later I had Terry O'Reilly. And then the last 3.5 years in Boston, I had Wade and Cashman.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You had some significant players. Well, maybe they had the significant players. Kind of how it worked,
Absolutely, right?
I think you said it right the first time.
Any plays on other rooms? You guys give crap to anybody in any other room, or play jokes on anybody on your teammates when you're on the road that way?
Oh, sometimes you short-sheeted, or you got cornflakes, or different things like that. Or if you were a balcony, you got a bucket of water. But you always have to be careful.
Kept you on your toes. That's important.
I would want to be his roommate.
Yeah.
Well, at least you'd know where he was at all times. So
Exactly.
that's a benefit for you.
Or one of the things that you guys will enjoy is that I used to leave numbers for players to call because they were supposed to be interviewed. And they would call this number, and it might be a kind of a shady place to be calling.
So what time's the interview?
Oh man, that's awesome.
So,
All right.
So after your 10-year career, did you leave the game? I didn't see any references to any type of coaching or any other involvement. Did you? What happened after you decided to hang them up?
Yeah. Well, the reason I hang them up is I tore my knee.
Okay.
So I rehabbed, and that was in the spring and late March. And then I was off skates for a couple of weeks, and I skated the morning of the practice morning of the first playoff game, and my knee blew up again. So I went and had it operated on.
Okay.
And then I rehabbed in the summer, and I went back to pass my medical for training camp in the fall, and my knee needed another operation again. So that year I rehabbed all winter, and during the course of that, I had another year left on my contract, and I was 32 or 3, and Pittsburgh opted to buy me out because the doctor who did the operation, he advised me not to play anymore.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. So during the course of that winter, I had a car dealer guy in New Hampshire, and him and I were negotiating to purchase a leasing company that had about 300 school buses and high-end vehicles. And it was a family operation. And at the same time, I had gone home always in the summer to my farm. A friend of mine from high school days had an insurance and real estate company. And he always told me, like, when you finish hockey, come back and we'll make a partner and own the company. So make a long story short, the lease company, a family member stepped up and wanted to keep it. So I just moved back home to North Battleford and ended up being one of the owners of the real estate and insurance company.
Nice.
Yeah, worked out well for you. Do you strap on the skates anymore for alumni games or anything like that?
Well, we had a beer league, much like you guys probably. And we used to play every Thursday, and I haven't been on the ice for 13 years now. I quit when I was 60, and I wanted to keep my legs for hunting and fishing.
And has that worked out for you so far?
Oh yes, they're good now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Do you miss it?
Sometimes I do. And most of the time I don't. Like, I don't miss playing like on that Thursday night beer league at all.
Yeah.
But you know, when the playoffs come, I try to watch most of the games in playoffs.
Who do you follow?
I know it's so hard to win a championship, so I always cheer for the underdog. I don't care if, you know, the Bruins or whoever it may be, or Pittsburgh. I always like to see another team try to win it. It's tough to win Stanley Cup. And it's just like yesterday. I know both teams had won in the past there, but Philly or the Eagles, I was hoping they would win because the most recent success has been the Kansas City Chiefs.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you keep in touch with any of the old teammates at all?
Yeah, I talked to, my roommate Cashman. I talked to Bucyk probably the most. Rick Middleton, Terry Riley. When I go to Boston, I stay with Terry Riley.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Let's look back at the locker room atmosphere with the Boston Bruins, and you named off a bunch of guys, and we talked about, you know, that they had that extra step because they put forth the effort to be that better player. What about their personalities off the ice, like Bucyk and Orr and Esposito and these guys? What are they like away from the rink?
Well, they're just ordinary guys. I mean, they like to have fun. They go out for dinner. We do lots of different things. Go to the movies, eat popcorn, that type of thing. They're just ordinary guys, really. There's not much difference between anybody else. Only they have the unique skill of being an athlete.
Yeah, very high level.
Very high level athlete.
Yeah.
So now that you've hung them up, you haven't skated for 13 years. You're done with the beer league. What are you up to now? You mentioned hunting and fishing. Well,
I come to Arizona to golf and stay out of the snowbanks at home.
As you should.
And I used to like ice fishing.
How often do you get out on the links?
The host here, Ken, and I, we tried to play Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays together. So.
Oh my gosh,
Nice.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
As you look back, we talked about your youth, and you gave a shout out to some of the coaches. Who was the coach that you learned the most from in the pro ranks?
In the pro ranks, we had a coach in Oklahoma City, Donnie Anderson. I only had him for 1 year, but he was a very technical a team-orientated coach where he had a real good team concept, always a good game plan type of thing. And we probably overachieved because we had my last year in there, we had a poor team, but we did make the playoffs. And I think it was due to his coaching ability.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a great shout out to him. As you look back on your career, is there anything you would have wanted to change about it?
Yeah, I wish we'd have won the cup the 2 times that we lost.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Okay, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Obviously, you wanted to win, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, you're it's at that level, it's 1 or 2 mistakes. It's the difference between winning or losing. In the case of Montreal, I think at that time when we lost to them, they had a better team, I thought. Like a better team-wise, not better individuals. They had a better team, and they had terrific goaltending. And one thing about an NHL, if you don't have goaltending in the playoffs, you don't win at that competitive level.
Ride a hot goalie.
Yeah. And the same thing with Philly. The year that I was traded, I ended up with 4 or 5 guys from the Philly, and we discussed around the case of a beer and saying like the difference between Boston and Philly when they won and they beat us was Bernie Perrant.
Oh yeah,
that was the difference. And that makes a big difference,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah, you can't win without goaltending.
Yeah.
Is there anything looking back? Let's talk about Montreal. They have a hot goaltender. They've got a great team. Is there anything you think that your team could have done differently, or you were just really outmatched at that point?
Well, we weren't totally outmatched, but at that level, you're only as good as probably as your weakest player, and maybe their weakest player was better than our player.
Okay.
And that makes a difference because you can win games and play mediocre if you have good goaltending or you get lucky. But when you do a 7-game series, the best players always are the best players that are going to win.
And if you have great coaching too, you can take care of those flaws. You see those flaws and you could just exacerbate that. You can really...
That's exactly right.
Make that come to the forefront.
Yeah, although when I was in Pittsburgh, we played Montreal, and they were in the same division. In my first year in Pittsburgh, we were ahead of Montreal towards the end of January in our division, and they came to our good town of Pittsburgh on a Friday night game. So I went in a little bit earlier, and I talked to the maintenance guys. At the terminology at that time were the bull gang, and they ran the arena. And I said, tonight about 5:30, I want you to turn the ice plant off. So he turned the ice plant down, and the ice was just brutal. So
Soft
and
as
we
heck.
weren't going to beat Montreal that night because they were hot. They had probably won 8 or 10 games in a row, and they're challenging us. So that night we beat them by 1 or 2 goals. So the next night we play them back to back. We're in Montreal. The next night we play them in Montreal, and the ice is just slick. After the second period, it's about 6-0 for Montreal. So I went to Jacques Lemaire, who I had to play against all the time. I said, Jacques, what the heck happened? What's going on here? I said, last night you guys couldn't handle the puck. And I said, tonight we haven't even seen the puck. And he says in his broken English, yeah, you guys, we know what you've done. You turned that ice plant off. So it was an equalizer.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's one way to slow them down, huh?
Yeah, right.
Oh, we didn't talk about Pittsburgh a whole lot. When you played for them, did you have a favorite player that you enjoyed being on the line with, or somebody that stood out in the locker room that, you look back and you thought highly of them?
Denny Huron was our goalie. And he was a quiet guy, French guy. He was a very quiet guy, but very, very efficient, very good goaltender. And he was our mainstay player. So if you're going to look up to one of the guys, I would probably have looked up to him more than anything.
He was a leader in the locker room then, I would guess, as well.
No, quiet, but he's the goalie, and he come to play every game, and he made the difference for us winning and losing all the time.
The standing joke is goaltenders have got a little bit of a screw loose. Was it any different in the NHL?
Well, there's some guys that are definitely different, but maybe there's some forwards that are the same way too.
Yeah.
We might be talking to one.
Well, it's a pressure position, number one. If they make a mistake, the puck is in the net, so it counts against you, and they can't offset that by going out and scoring a goal. So they're the puck stops there, like the buck stops here.
So what do you think about shootouts for NHL games now after the 3-on-3. That puts a lot of pressure on that goalie.
Yeah. I think it's exciting for the fans.
Oh, absolutely. For the fans,
Yeah. I think that's that's the name of the game. I think the players like it too. Like they get a chance 3-on-3. I mean, you play for a tie, I guess, on the road. You play for a win at home.
Sure.
So that comes into effect too. But the necessary part of that is more to do with travel, I think, because there's lots of times there's back-to-back games. So if a game goes into overtime, and I've been in a couple of them where you end up playing 2 or 3 periods of overtime and still no goal scored. Yeah. So this is one way to offset that.
Sure. And the top players are going to be playing those overtimes, and it's just going to kind of abuse them, actually.
Well, I know what seat I'd have today. I'd be on the bench watching them play.
I'll be ready tomorrow night, Coach.
Gregg, this has been absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I'm in awe sitting in front of a guy that I watched play as a youth growing up, Boston Bruins, and still are. The Boston Bruins are my favorite team, always will be my favorite team. And I just thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk to us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, it's been my pleasure, really. Thanks very much, boys.
Well, thanks, Greg. Special big thank you here to Gregg Sheppard, and a huge thank you to our audience, and also for Ken and Trina for hosting us. Special thank you to our sponsors, Market & Johnson, Parker Insurance, Valley Sports Academy, Northwoods Therapy Associates, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and visit us on our website at thebreakoutsessions.com. And as always, folks, until our next episode, stay on your inside edges.